Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can. This season of the No BS Pod is proudly brought to you by our friends Beyond and Costco. Beyond offers you the tools you need to get, grow, and optimize your revenue.
And Costco's best-in-class tech streamlines operations for the local traditional vacation rental management company, making them the local heroes with a global presence.
Our podcast is not possible without the generosity of our sponsors. Make sure to check out their exclusive offers specifically geared for our No BS listeners.
Mateo, how are you?
John, as always, fantastic. No real complaints. How are you?
I'm really good. Season 3, episode 4. It's been a whirlwind. It's been nonstop. We have an amazing guest this week, and I want to jump right in. I don't want to waste too much time listening to our hot air. We have a lot of it.
Let's do it.
All right, excellent. So we're going across the pond with a huge player in the vacation rental holiday let cottages space. We are excited to bring in and announce Graham Donoghue of Sykes Holiday Cottages. Thanks for joining us, Graham.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Pleasure. Delighted to be here. Looking forward to it.
I was lucky enough to, by accident, sit down. I was at the VRMA Executive Summit down in West Palm in Florida, a couple months ago now, and was eating lunch or breakfast or one, I don't know, where you said, I always make a rule for myself when I sit down at any one of these conferences to go and sit with people I have never talked with. And I also have a kind of an unwritten rule that if I have a team of people on my team, like if we're, I'm there with Hopper and we're all there, is that we don't sit together. Hey, you go sit over there. Everyone kind of go meet and mingle with other people. It's just a great way to know each other, and had an opportunity to, eavesdrop and listen to Graham talking to other people. I got a few words in here and there, but I was excited to connect with Graham, and again, excited to have you on your show. How the heck does a guy like yourself, and we want to hear your story, but how do you get into, from, your, what is it, the money, you're doing a bunch of different things on digital with money and stuff like that. But how do you go ahead and you get from, like, you're on, was it Money Supermarket and then Travel Supermarket? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And then you're in 2016, you are, kind of move into this position as CEO of Sykes. How does that happen?
I think, so the story is Money Supermarket is a price comparison website. So I guess, I'm trying to think of an equivalent you have in the US. Klarna maybe isn't a good example. But one of the original price comparison websites that existed. And I joined there from a travel company called TUI, so the world's largest tourism organization. And I went through 7 years learning about this thing called the internet. That shows you how old I am. The internet hardly existed back in those days. It was always about contact centers and about selling holidays on the high street. And I then joined Money Supermarket because it was entrepreneurial and it was doing some pretty cool things. And over 7 years, we had 54 different channels, credit cards, loans, mortgages, travel. I actually joined to run the travel business. Okay. And then I realized within about 3 months that there was more money in financial services. So the board very fortunately said, well, why don't you look after the financial services part of the business? So I looked after that, and I also looked after utilities, so energy switching as well. And there wasn't many price comparisons back then. I've said Klarna at the beginning. I meant Credit Karma. I think it's probably a good example I can use in the US, where it was starting to sort of aggregate. But, Money Supermarket was a tremendous ride, entrepreneurial. And then suddenly it IPO'd, and I think it was the biggest IPO of a .com in Europe when it IPO'd. So it was round about a couple of $1 billion IPO, really successful. And then suddenly you've got these things called analysts and shareholders. And they expect you every quarter to be able to tell you what's going to happen and et cetera. The environment changed, and it became more challenging, became a little bit more political as organizations get bigger. It became less fun. So I actually retired, believe it or not, at 42. And I say retired. I basically said I didn't want to do a proper job ever again. I wanted just to, I had the notion of just being this wandering nomad that went into organizations and helped them understand, pearly words of my wisdom, how it could help them maybe be better, for what it's worth. So I took a time off for about a year, and then I spent time with my family, with my wife, my kids. Took my kids to school every day, learned how to do a bit of gardening and so forth. And then I got really bored, really quite quickly, and that's how I ended up in Sykes. So this is the genuine truth. I was cutting my grass one day. And I got a phone call from a headhunter who said, who I know very well, who said, "Look, I know you're not doing anything, and I know this might be really quite small compared to what you've done before, but it's in travel. We know you love travel. It's in the northwest of the UK. That's where I lived. It's a small business with huge potential, and it's backed by private equity." And I knew very little about private equity. I didn't really know what it was. "Why don't you go and have a meeting?" And that's what I did. I met the private equity people first and said, "Explain private equity to me. How does it work? Help me understand what your ambition is, how we can grow faster." And I met the team, fell in love with the category, fell in love with the team, and then joined, and then said, "Right, whatever plan you've got, let's just double it. So what do we need to do in the next 4 years?" Yeah, so it's just double everything. Double the head count, double the property count, double the revenue, double the EBITDA. What does double everything look like? And more importantly, how do you build something that could go from double to 10x in a relatively short space of time? Because the headroom's there. And that is what started in 2016. That was the journey, where we said, like, how are we going to do this? What's the plan? What's the master plan? And what investment do we need? What capability do we need in people? What culture do we need? And we started it. And, where we are today, we can go back, but to give you the context, we're at 1,700 people from 185.
Yeah, so I think you more than doubled.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah,
Just a little bit. Yeah, not too much.
Yeah. We were making about, in sterling, actually, it was about $7 million profit we were making back then. That's probably increased by more than 10 times in that period. So we're pretty profitable. From a supply point of view, stock, we've gone from 5,500 properties to 23,000 properties in the portfolio. But also we've acquired 24 businesses and integrated them. And we also now own a whole bunch of assets as well, which we build and we rent out. And, so we're a supplier, operator, or a marketing services company. We're a company that does linen. We own a spa, we own a restaurant, and the rest goes on.
So you wear a ton of hats as far as Sykes Cottages, wears tons of different, opportunities. For those of us, and I'd say the majority of our audience is here stateside today, we're working on that. For those that don't know Sykes Holiday Cottages, like, is there a company, and I know there's no one that's going to compare, apples to apples 100%, but what company here in the States would you say is a comparable comparison to how you're running your business here stateside?
It's a good question. So when I first went to the US to have a look about 3 years ago, I didn't find many organizations that I thought were similar. And some of that is as a result of just the way that consumers behave differently in the US. Not many, so we're 85% of our business direct. Can't think of too many of vacation rental companies in the US that have that level of direct. I think a few are starting to exist. We were very profitable and growing fast. So we had managed to scale and be profitable. And what I was finding when I spoke to people, they were growing really fast, but the profitability was sort of going that way, which is fine because, sometimes you have to invest and speculate to sort of grow the futures. That was unusual. And I think, managed service, which is what we would call the cleaning and the laundry and the maintenance, all the stuff, that was a big part of the vacation rental experience that was managed by property managers, whereas it's less so in Europe and in the UK. But my recent trip, when I was there, before I came down to the beautiful Palm Beach, which is very nice, I spent a bit of time in New York, and met a few people I'd met before, and I'm starting to see the emergence more of a few organizations. I think post-COVID, where COVID has sort of regained some of the muscle power, if you want to call it that, and some property managers in particular think have done pretty well on the back of it. So I admire what Steve Meibel is doing, and V-Trips is a good example. And I admire what Steve's doing, because I think, he knows what he is, he knows what he's not, he knows what the business is. And I think he has a formula and a pattern, is repeating it, and it, seems to be doing pretty well. I also know the chaps that evolve very well. That's probably the closest model, I would say.
Right. And that's kind of what I was assuming you were going to say, based on the focus of maintenance and housekeeping, and they're kind of separate. Like Evolve's a little bit different model here in the States compared to most. They're more of a booking platform, where in the maintenance and the housekeeping could be, it's almost like an add-on. You don't necessarily have to go all in with that. And they've scaled pretty aggressively. Do you think that with the Evolve, and I know and I don't want to compare you apples to apples to Evolve, but do you think, when you look at your inventory, do you have, the majority of it, is it exclusive, or is it like fully managed? Or exclusive is the wrong choice of word. Is it fully managed? No. Whereas you're doing, everything from, booking to housekeeping, maintenance, or are you more of a booking, that side of it, and that the homeowners are still dealing with the, the maintenance and the housekeeping side of things?
Well, the most important thing for us is in the UK and in many parts of Europe, demand is not a problem. I know it's slightly different in the US in terms of where you get the demand, but demand's not an issue. So we have 4 or 5 times more demand than we have supply. It's the way to look at it. Right. Now, it's not quite as straightforward as that, but I don't lay in bed at night and I worry about how am I going to find more consumers.
Right. Heads in beds is not an issue for you.
Yeah, but it's a supply constrained market. So we always start from the position of, we will do whatever it takes to get the best properties in the best locations. Now, if that means we have to do full managed service, by that I mean pretty much everything, give us the keys, we will do that. If it means the owner wants to do the cleaning and the laundry maintenance, etc., and we're just going to provide the guest management, maintenance, cash flow, booking services, then we'll do that. So we have like a menu is the best way of describing it. It's like we sort of, there's a start, and then it can go up or go down, and it's
like a la carte after that.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of that, yeah. And I think, where we stand today is across the total portfolio. If I leave New Zealand for 1 second, because that's slightly different, 85% roughly of the portfolio, we're doing everything apart from the cleaning.
Okay.
15% of the portfolio, we're doing the cleaning in full managed service.
Okay.
And so there's like a base commission level, which is an average of about 20%. So let's just say. Then we have a booking fee that we charge that tips it up to maybe 26%. And then depending on the level of services an owner wants, then that will take the rate up as well. It never quite gets as high as, say, a Vacasa at like 47 or whatever it may be.
Right.
It's fully laden, it's probably sitting at about maybe 35%, maybe slightly more than that at most. But really it's about making sure we get the best supply. So we'll do whatever we need, which is why we do have, in hyper local locations, we have laundrettes, we have, our own linen, we have our own, cleaning companies, etc. as well.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Casago. And
John, you mean Casago?
No, I meant Casago.
John, that's not how you say it. You gotta get our sponsor's name right, man.
Anyway, as I was saying before I got cut off, this episode is brought to you by Casago. And if you haven't heard of them, then here's the deal. Casago helps bring the biggest tech and strategy to the local operators so they can take on the big players. Casago's franchise model really does streamline the operations of the local and traditional vacation rental management company, making them the local heroes with a global presence.
And the industry changing as much as it has, Casago's not only bringing these high-powered tools to the local operators, but they're also creating something even more powerful by making sure everyone is in the community and constantly learning from different markets and operators.
We tell you this because they've joined us to get this exclusive offer just for checking them out a little bit more. Go to casago.com/nobs. That is casago.com/NOBS to book your discovery call. What's included, you ask? A review of your business operation expenses to identify where you can save money, information on how to partner with Casago or Casago to scale your company, and a free $100 Amazon gift card for attending their 1-hour discovery call. Now let's get back to the pod.
So it's Casago.
No, it's for sure Casago.
You have no idea what you're talking about. It's Casago.
No, dude, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Whatever. Let's get back to the business. One of the questions I have for you is there's two things that kind of stick out in my mind that you said when you're talking about your business. My first question is, I want to rewind a little bit and go back to your first day coming into the space. 2016. And your first day in, what stood out? What was the immediate thing that you saw that in the state of the industry in which you found it, where you knew you could have an initial impact and change for success for the business?
It was really clear to me. It was, here's a great company, and here's a great market and a real opportunity, but the company is lacking a narrative and a story and a belief that it can become truly awesome. And that was like, it was so clear. It was sort of it was the business of marginal gains that existed since 1991 and had just done a little bit better. And the culture that had been created in the business was one of probably more departmentation between the different layers in the company, between reservations and, property recruitment, operations, finance, back office. It's all quite layered, but nowhere was there glue that held it together and said, like, this is what we're going to become. We're going to do it in the next 4 years. These are the 4 things we need to do it. And this is how we're going to measure the success. And this is how we're going to behave. So it lacked a bit of a, like a rallying cry or galvanization to bring it together. All the ingredients were there. Just if you tried to bake a cake in the way it was when I came in, you would have made a very poor cake. And my job was to sort of try and bring it all together. So we did things in the right way, spoke to our investors and said, look, this is where we're going. Are you with us? Can we have some money to help us go faster?
Isn't that always the question?
Yeah, can we hire some great people? And this is how we want to talk, how we want to behave, how we want to think. And that was the thing that stood out to me, really day one, early on. Also, interestingly, I remember walking around the building on my very first day, and people said to me, God, I'm really amazed that you've turned up and you're not wearing a suit. Considering where you've come from and what you've done. And I thought that was quite interesting, in terms of the perceptions of what people were thinking I was going to be as this sort of a new CEO from, the corporate world, let's just say.
Well, there was a wave of that, right? Like at that time in that transition, we saw a certain level of sophistication coming into the industry. And I remember, my first conference, I felt overdressed in a polo, in khaki pants, and because we used to wearing suits, and that's one of the things that stood out. But one of the things I hear in what you're saying is, you've built all the ingredients to build your brand. Right. We have so many businesses in our industry today that, but everyone's trying to, we have this mythology of the elusive STR brand. What's going to be the brand? Who's going to be the brand? Is it going to be Vacasa? Is it going to be V-Trips? Is it going to be XYZ company? I love to hear how you approached this and then what was built out of it, because from this side of the pond and looking over there, I've always heard about what you're doing, and it's exciting and it's great, but hearing it from you, it's almost like you've built something that could encapsulate everything that was needed by a different level of demographics within our or within our industry. So different types of managers with different needs, or different owners with different needs, right? Not managers, as owners, and you're able to give them something that could attach them to you, right? And then once you got them, you want to keep them happy, and you're able to. It seems like a fascinating story. One of the things that sticks out is the ownership component. You own pieces, you own buildings, you do buildings that you own. How did you get your investors to buy into that? First of all, and what was the thought process? Because that could be an extremely risky undertaking, right? There's a lot of risk within that, and being successful, and it's not cheap to do that. But if you do it right,
look, I think you don't do it day one. You have to earn the right over time to be able to have the grown-up conversations about moving from asset light to more asset heavy, and what does that really mean. But going back to I'll come back to that, but what was important for us is to say, look, do we all believe, 185 people back 2016, do we all believe we can be the best at what we're trying to do here? And if we believe that, then how are we going to measure it by when? What do we need to do by when? Really simple. So one is about a purpose. What's the purpose? Why are we getting out of our bed in the morning? And do we all believe it? Then secondly, how are we going to measure it? So what do we need to do by when? And we anchored ourselves on supply because that was a real fuel. So we said we need 20,000 properties by 2020. That was the number, because the original plan said 10,000 properties. So we said double it.
And you doubled it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Now, look, for me, it wasn't about we've got to hit 20,000 properties or, do or die. It was the aspirational moonshot of saying we believe we can get to 20,000 properties. And I always believe in setting what we call BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. Just you look at it and you go, Jesus, there's no way, we're going to get there. That looks really quite challenging. And then we sat down to say, well, how do we do it? Well, what do we need? Well, first of all, we need to have a trusted brand. And the only way we're going to get a trusted brand is by earning trust. So how do we do that? Then we need to deliver the best experience for our customers. What does that mean? Then we need to be the owner's choice. So if an owner chooses us, we need to know why they're choosing us over something else. What's important to the owner? Is it revenue? Is it warm bodies and beds? Is it service? Whatever it may be. And then the final one we said is, well, we have to build this in the capability of being a platform using data that allows us to scale. And so those were the 4 pillars of our, so everything we did had to fit into those 4 pillars. And if it didn't, we shouldn't be doing it. And then there's a series of behaviors, which are values that are driving the way. Then each one of these pillars then has to have a set of objectives and measurable. What are you going to do by when?
Right.
What does it look like? What are the key measures? And then naturally what then happens is, well, capability. What do you need? Well, we need to hire people who can run a business twice the size, and we probably need to hire them now. We probably can't afford them now, but we need to hire them now. So they're there for the future. We need to get 20,000 properties. Well, we're never going to do it organically. So what do we do? Well, let's split it in 2. Let's see how many can we get through M&A. Who can we buy? How many can we get organically? Well, if you want to buy some businesses, you need to go and borrow some money. So how much money are we going to go and borrow to buy some businesses? And then, who are we going to buy? Where are we going to buy? Is it going to add value? What are the measures of success of value? How do we make sure we don't just collect businesses? How do we integrate them quickly? And how do we show our investors that there's a model and a formula that makes them more confident? And that allowed us over time to just grow and grow the profit curve and get more comfortable. Then eventually you come with a conversation that says, and you know what? I'd like to own some assets. I like to buy, so you have a business in the US called Getaway Vacations, which are, I think they call them outposts in forests. So we own very similar.
Okay.
We own 700 cabins, 4, anything from, 1 bedroom up to 4 or 5 bedroom tree houses and cabins, all purpose built. We build them, across the UK. And we own and operate the whole things. And, and the reason we were able to do that is it fitted directly into our mission. It fitted into our purpose. Our investors could see how it would add value.
Well, and you have a proven track record of success leading up to your ask. It's not like you're just shooting from the hip saying, this is what we're going to do, and without a proven track record.
I think like investors, like anything, like, if you're, if you earn trust through, executing, and it's the failure of most organizations that I come across or speak to that are struggling. They don't know their purpose and they just don't know how to execute. And it's drawing that line or that narrative and understanding between this is where I want to go, and we believe it, and we're going to keep communicating it, and everybody believes it. So when I look over my shoulder, I've got 1,700 people with me that know exactly where I'm going, and this is how we're going to execute it. These are the key things that are required. And that's the framework we use. And it's, touch wood, it's been relatively successful. We could have gone faster. We could have gone and bought loads of things. We could have come across to the US and bought up a whole bunch of things, because we turned down lots of opportunities. But unless they fitted into a model, unless I could see how we create value, unless we believe that we could make value from it, and then we always said no to it. We had to be quite disciplined in our formula and our thinking.
Have you spent hours determining what rate you should charge at your short-term rental property?
Of course you have. This is a huge part of the vacation rental business, and it can be tricky knowing if your place is on par with other properties in the area. But now you don't have to wonder. You don't have to worry. And that's because it's so much easier pricing out your properties with Beyond Pricing.
Here's how it works. Beyond uses a dynamic pricing tool along with in-depth market research to make sure your property gets valued exactly how it should be. They take dozens of factors into account, including your property's location, other rental rates in the area, any amenities on your property, nearby attractions, all of the things that most of us just wouldn't think about when pricing our own properties. That way you don't miss out on profits and your guests feel confident in the rate that they're paying, so they come back again and again and again.
That's a win-win. And it gets even better. Beyond's platform is easy to use, so you can save time and think about other areas of your business, or enjoy your free time a little more now that you won't be stressing out about the rate you're charging. There's a reason why hundreds of single and multi-property owners trust Beyond's platform to determine what they should charge their guests. Beyond is dedicated to the short-term rental community. It's where their business was born, and it's where they intend to stay.
Don't wait, get the profits you deserve. Go to gobeyondpricing.com/no-bs for a free portfolio assessment and a $30 credit when you sign up. That's go.beyondpricing/no-bs. Thanks for listening. And now let's get back to the episode. Graham, I got a question for you. You scaled exponentially since 2016 through now. We've seen, comparable companies here in the States that have done similar things. Overall, there is a mixed bag of reactions from current property managers to homeowners to hosts to companies of your size and girth that are doing the things that you are doing. There, some that's like, this is amazing, this is wonderful. You have your own proprietary tech. You're a tech first kind of company, but then there's also some like overall, if I were to say, look at property managers here on the US that aren't, say, Vacasa or Evolve, that would be like, I don't really love what these large corporate or these large companies are doing. Do you feel that you're scaling as quickly and as fast and as grand as you did in the US has what has that done to your brand? Is it a positive thing overall? Or do you think that you've had to battle that to, in recent years to kind of keep that positive brand image of Sykes?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We could have a 2 or 3 hour long podcast just on brand. What is a brand? Right. What does it mean? It's we made a conscious decision that when we did a lot of M&A, what we were also acquiring was not just great properties. We were acquiring great people and brands that had legacy, that owners had chosen to list their property with them for a reason. Some of it was about the brand, some of it legacy, some of that is the localization and so forth. So what we do, which is different from many organizations, is, we don't just have one brand. And you'll hear me talk about Sykes Holiday Cottages, but actually, and at the moment, I'm actually going through a whole rebranding. What does it mean? Because it doesn't make any sense anymore, Sykes Holiday Cottages, because we've got 26 brands in the company. Now, right. Sykes is a bit of a powerhouse because it's got all this demand and all this volume. But, we have real local niche specialist brands. We have caravan operating brands. We have Forest Holidays as a brand. We have premium specialists, etc. And we maintain and look after all those brands because they have an understanding, have a purpose, and owners and customers want to use them. Now it carries an overhead, but we're happy to carry that overhead, as opposed to just saying kill them, consolidate it, and it's all under one mothership, because it adds value, and we can see that it adds value. So we're a collection of brands that have come together, and we'll come together basically because we believe that collectively we're more powerful than one overall individual sort of a power brand. So, we're a brand that's salient, as in Sykes Holidays. We're a brand that's considered, but, I wouldn't say we're a brand that has massive differentiation at a brand level from many others. But what we do have is supply that we control that's exclusive, that you can't get anywhere else. And that is powerful because it helps us build the brand. And what we do is we spend a lot of time on service and use that as a differentiator. So we obsess about Net Promoter Score. We obsess about, trying to improve the overall experience for our guests and for our owners. And that engenders loyalty, trust, and we have a high rebook rate. Now that is all part of your brand, but we do it through the hard lifting, as opposed to, spending £20 million advertising or buying a football team.
Right. Well, quick pause just for our listeners, and I love that last comment about buying a football team. But NPS, for those that are listening, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, is basically you're going to go ahead and survey your customers, and you're going to go ahead and your clients or the users and ask them if they would go ahead and, would you rebook or reuse NPS? I mean, rebook with Sykes. And
yeah, the question, it's a very simple question. It's we ask 4 questions, but there's really one power question. It's like, would you recommend Sykes to your family friends? And then you have to pick a number between 0, like no, through to 10. 10? Yeah. Okay. And the 9s and the 10s are what's called promoters. And then the zeros to sort of I think it's 6 are the detractors, and then it might be 5, and then the bit in the middle, the sort of the 7s and the 8s, or 6, 7, 8s, they're passives. They're a bit like, yeah, it was all right. And what you want, and then what you do is you minus the promoters from the detractors to give you a score. And a really good Net Promoter Score is somewhere between 45 and 50. A poor one, or more average, I should say, is maybe 35. An exceptional one is anything 70 or above. And obviously, the bigger you are, the more scale you have, the more reviews you go, the harder it is to maintain those higher numbers. And the higher the NPS, there's studies galore on this. The higher the NPS, generally the better the company is, better retention, better loyalty, better profitability, better run companies, all that stuff. And so what we've always looked for is like, what's that key metric, that one metric, that's not profit. If we can drive it higher, the business performs better. And that's where we use NPS. And we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of energy just obsessing over everything. So when a detractor comes in, you're like, damn, and
how do you change them, that guest from a detractor to even passive? Obviously you want to get them, but it makes sense. Total sense.
Yeah. And that's about intervention. That's about closing the loop. It's about making sure it's fixed, making sure you learn from it. Now we employ, I think there's 62 people in this team now, and all they do is just really obsess over trying to make this better and getting all the feedback because of the volume. We're taking, you're taking 3 million people on holiday a year. You're getting a lot of feedback, about 40% giving you feedback. And then you're getting a lot of instant responses. That happens at the moment of truth.
Right.
The moment, you've gone on holiday, you've come back, you've checked out, it's the day after. How do we do? And then that's the loop that we close.
From a brand standpoint too, something you said about your brand, I think that's really stands out to me, and the idea of what brands really are. I think when we hear, oh, there's no, or who's going to be the STR brand, and like, what is that going to look like? And I think it's kind of homogenous when people think about it in their brain, but I think something that you hit on that I'm sure is the key to your success is the diversity of what your brand actually makes up and what it encompasses. Because if there is diversity within your brand that covers a wide gambit of everything the people you are serving and the customers you are serving needs, my metric is always, more than anything else, where the customer's going. You know, what success are you showing? Like, are people staying with you? Are your homeowners, you know, happy and staying with you within that space? Are the numbers supporting that? Are your guests happy? Are those the metrics that people are looking at? And yes, as I promised to Steve, profitability is key. And I think it's very different in terms of the way that I hear that you do things and the way that I hear other brands in the US do things. And in the race to profitability, right? I think one of the things that's noble for you is you did it at scale and at time, and to be able to do it through M&A and bring cultures along and to merge and to bring cultures into a brand and make them fit and work is no easy task. We see people fail at this all the time. They buy businesses, you know, they think they're buying the incumbencies, and it just doesn't work with the cultures.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, there's no magic pill here. There's no sort of a, you know, matrix moment. You have to do many things very well.
Yeah.
And most paths come back to the people you have, your employees, and how you make them feel. That's really important to us as an organization. And hiring talent and not being afraid to, like, you know, almost overhire. And so we believe, and I believe in this very much, that, you know, if you think of a flow of employee experience, and then you think, if you get that right, what it leads to in terms of the customer experience, and then what that leads to in terms of the business experience, you know, if you go straight in, you're trying to sort of, you know, go right to the end of it, it doesn't work. You have to lay all those foundations. You have to do all that work, and you have to make sure you've got right people, smart people, who know what's expected of them, who are understanding their purpose, understanding the why, coming to work every day with a spring in their step, who are properly paid, properly remunerated, and you share out the love, share out the equity. If we all make money, I mean, we give, let's say give away, that's the wrong word. We distribute about 10% of our profit to our employees each year through various incentive schemes, and you know, we spend a lot of time on culture, because you know, we can foster all that. It just leads to better outcomes for, like, you know, when you're interacting with guests or with owners, you know, better thinking, better mindset, better capability. But you've got to do so many things well. You know, I mean, I call it the flywheel, but it's like, you know, there's you know, my CFO's got a great expression. He's sort of he always talks about it as a marathon, and you know, we always talk about which water stop are we on in the marathon. Right, you know, because there's so many different water stops that you have to sort of go on.
Is that Michael Graham?
Yeah,
I met him as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a good analogy, because you know, we're always running the marathon, and we've definitely not completed one. You know, we've probably done a half marathon in our 5 years, but we got another, you know, we've got another 5 years ahead of us, and you know, and we have some big targets, big ambition, and you know, we just keep resetting it, because we operate, you know, in an amazing category that is delivering amazing experiences. We're creating memories, which are, you know, brilliant. Yeah. We're taking people on holiday. Yeah. We're helping communities. We're helping owners have, you know, additional income. I mean, there's so many things that are just joyful about the short-term letting sort of industry. And I know you've got people throwing stones at us around regulation and various different things, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, this category is phenomenal, and it's so fragmented, and it's so huge. There's room for everybody. Now, I mean, I don't believe, and it's interesting, you know, who's going to be the brand or the STR brand. I don't think anybody is. I think there's going to be consolidation. You know, I think there's going to be lots of opportunities, but you know what? There's bounty for everybody.
Well, I think with the brand thing, Graham, is that there are people coming up in the space, and smaller operators that are looking at established brands as, as a guiding light, and so I don't necessarily look at it like who's going to be the brand. There's a handful of brands that are guiding lights, and then there's a bunch of brands that are trying to replicate the successes of these other brands, which, in most instances is a form of flattery, right?
Mhm.
Hey, Sykes has done some amazing things. We want to do things like Sykes. You're tracking, and I read an article, I think it was that Vanessa did actually did an interview with you a couple of years ago, where you're tracking over 20 million properties outside of your own to getting data. I mean, and we know that company, and you alluded to it earlier in our conversation, that this is when you first came in, say, we need data. We need data to go ahead and back everything we're doing. Like, this tracking of all these properties that you've been doing globally is obviously helped you scale, but where is this taking you today? Are you still tracking these millions and millions of properties? And
yeah, we are. we are. we are. But look, and people keep saying to me, so when are you going to America, or when are you going to Europe, or whatever? And my job as a CEO is to always be able to tell a story about value creation and how we're going to be successful for everyone, but most importantly, investors. Because, you need cash, you need capital, you need to be able to sort of keep growing. And we've taken a path that we're a private equity-backed company, and we have a whole bunch of investors who believe in us and give us that financial support. So I have to be able to understand where the market is, where I'm going. And also I have to be able to understand the story I want to tell in 5 years' time. So tracking all the properties globally, understanding, where are the opportunities, understanding how the markets are moving, understanding how regulation is playing in, understanding the difference between urban and rural, understanding the difference between managed service and property managers, understanding who are the 13,000 plus property managers that may exist globally. What are they doing? Who are the runners and riders? That's all part of what I need to know to be able to tell a story. Now, I may choose to say, there's an opportunity here, for some big, hairy, scary private equity company who may want to use us as the premier consolidator globally. It could happen. I need to know what that looks like. Equally at the moment, we have said, do you know what? We talk in the language of TAM, which, for your audience is total addressable market. I need to understand, what is my addressable market? That is why, if you think of our business, the best way to think of our business is, we have an agency business in Sykes and 22 other brands. We have a premium operator business where we run and operate in a Forest Holiday business. We have a camping and caravan division where we have 6,500 camping caravan pitches across the UK. And we have a small, but potentially future huge international business. And that's how we think. And what is that? At the highest level, there's 20 plus million properties and lots of RVs and caravans, and your TAM when you're talking about something like Getaway Vacations or Forest Holidays is very different, because that's about, is there land you can build in? A different type of TAM, because you're manufacturing. And whereas in your agency business, it's much more around stock and properties. Don't get me started in camping and caravan and RVs, because that market is enormous.
It's insane.
And the
it's
reason
exploding.
It is. And the reason it all works is, at its core, all of those divisions and all those businesses, what they want to do is to take people on holiday and make sure they have a really good time, create memories, and do it in a sustainable way. It doesn't matter what it is. And that's what our purpose is, so it translates across all of them.
With all this, you just talked about, what's next for Sykes? Can you allude at all with, we know you're talking about you're at the half marathon mark, and we know in 5 years you'll still be at that half marathon mark, right? But what's next for Sykes? If you can allude anything?
Might be running an ultra marathon then. We'll just extend the distance. Look, we're trying to create, and this is going to sound horrible, but I'll say it in financial terms. We're trying to create, 3 billion of enterprise value for our shareholders by 2026. That's sort of the value. And the reason I say that, and the reason we talk in that language, is if I know that, I can work my way back in terms of what are the building blocks to sort of get there. And what I know is that we need more supply.
Yeah.
Across all these categories, not just agency, but operator and caravans and possibly international. I know that we need to go from taking 3 million people on holiday to about 5 million people on holiday, which is roughly what the number is. I know that we'll need significant investment to sort of do that. I know we need more capability. We'll probably need, another 1,000+ people in order to sort of do that. Where we will do that, the geography we're in, that I don't know. That we will have to sort of work through and try and understand. So I work back from this sort of the enterprise value, as crude as it sounds, and then I sort of say, like, okay, so what's the revenue I need? What's the potential EBITDA that's going to generate?
Right.
And what are the business units that we have? And then what do those business units need to do? And I deconstruct the model in that particular way. And then that allows me to then go out and say, here's the story, here's the plan. Now, those 20 million properties we're tracking, here's the opportunity. And, and it could be, do you know what? We have to make a foothold into the US because the market's so big, it's so fragmented, and it's just so nice. So how could we enter the US? Well, let's go and buy X company. That gives us a beachhead. It gives us 1,000 to 2,000 properties, which is what you look at, and it's a good company, well run, and we can help them with capability technology, and we'll give them the ambition to getting to 5,000 or 6,000 properties in the next couple of years, and we'll provide all support. That could be one route, or it could be, do you know what? We have a brilliant business in New Zealand. Let's move from New Zealand into Auckland, into Australia. Sorry, from Auckland into Australia. Let's grow it that way. There's all these different opportunities that we can sort of look at, or it could be we just buy lots of RVs. It's all opportunity, and as long as we know how to create value and we can execute well, that's the key thing for me, then we'll keep sort of doing it.
What excites you about what you have coming down the pipeline, like with where Sykes and whatever the new name is? Please don't come up with something bad like Alphabet or something crazy. Like I think you're going to come up with a really cool name. I'm looking forward to the rebranding of what you're going to come out with. But my question to you is, like, what excites you? Like, what are you really looking forward to? And it could be anything else. It doesn't have to be directly related to your plan and path to profitability. But when you're looking at the future of what you've inherited and come into, what excites you every week?
Well, I get a kick out of seeing things grow and seeing things, building things, and then seeing how they sort of they flourish. I also get a real kick out of when you set a goal and set a challenge, and you're sitting there thinking, I have no idea how we're going to get there. This seems quite audacious at this point in time. And then when you get there and you're like, brilliant, but then you just say, well, let's reset that again. And that's just sort of so that really excites me in terms of growth, really, growth opportunity. The other thing I've really become very attuned to is a responsibility we have as a big business to really consider how we're balancing both profit, but also the impact that we can have on the planet as well. So we spent a lot of time and energy in our organization thinking about how we really hire talent and attract talent, because we're more than just a big profitable sort of a machine. We also care about the footprint. We care about the impact we have on the planet, and because we're big enough now, we can really do something about it, meaningful. So and I can see, I had a call yesterday with the team who are leading this in the UK, and we've just taken a whole bunch of families away who need a respite, who need care, and our owners have gifted weeks that can sort of happen. And just the joy, never mind the joy on the families, but the joy on the employees, because they're participating in that and they can see it happening. That will stick with me, and I think we want to do more and more of it. And I genuinely believe businesses can balance profit and purpose. You don't have to be a business, as Oliver said, you need to give away all your profit, and you need to do good. You can actually get it right. So, so I think that really excites me. And I think that probably leads to the final point, which is around, I love seeing people grow as well. I love seeing people grow in the organization. I love seeing your talent, moving through the organization. When you're bigger, you can do clever things. You can move people around. You can take opportunities. You can move people to different countries. You can sort of, take people from graduates, straight university, and then suddenly you can put them in charge of, within 5 years, relatively large divisions. I get a real kick out of that.
You mentioned a lot of like a philanthropic kind of approach to doing these things, and you also mentioned environmentally focused as well. And it with being as large and as big a footprint, carbon footprint, is there too? Are there specific things that you're trying to do to work on your sustainability with the environment as well?
Yeah, as you would expect with us, there's a clear plan, there's clear measures, and we hold everybody accountable to it. We built it into people's objectives. We have a clear understanding of what we're trying to do, and we use the B Corp framework. I don't know if you're familiar with B Corp.
Yep.
You should definitely look up B Corp, which came out of the US. So amazing brands like Patagonia is a good example of an amazing brand that's a B Corp. And that gives you a framework you can sort of that's aligned to sort of what's called the SDG sort of goals coming out of the EU around how we should really be thinking about balancing across multiple areas. So it includes, governance of your business. It includes how you think about your employees. They call them workers, which I don't really like, but workers.
Right.
How you think about what you give back to communities. How you think about, your social impact. How you think about your environmental impact. And each one of these things has measures and goals and actions. And you can go on to B Corp, and there's a free assessment you can fill out. You answer a whole bunch of questions. It gives you a score, and it tells you how you're doing, and it tells you what great looks like, and it tells you what world class looks like, and you can set a journey. And so we use that as a way of saying, what are the things we want to do? So we make a commitment to, having, I guess the numbers will be 3,400 volunteering days a year. And we allow all of our employees to go out and give back to communities or share their skills. We've made a real commitment in terms of reducing carbon, not offsetting, but reducing it. So the first thing is to measure it, understand the core business impact, but then understand the wider footprint, and then say, what can you do to influence and reduce it? We make a commitment around how we think about supporting biodiversity projects, about how we think, commitment to trees and tree planting in terms of volume. And the list goes on, so all of that. It's all built into people's objectives. It's all built into people's objectives. And we track it and we reward it, and we have dedicated people who we hire who do nothing but this. We call them impact managers, and they have ambassadors, and we really we work with local communities. We sponsor everything from local football teams to sponsoring the national parks across the UK to supporting natural habitat planting. The list goes on. Every day there's somebody somewhere doing something. There was people yesterday I just saw on our intranet who were painting garden sheds at the Neuromuscular Society. So basically, helping a society out with charitable work. People just love doing it, and and it's a key when we're hiring people and talking to people. It's just a key way that we sort of get people engaged in the organization. It helps if you got really nice coffee. It helps if you have a gym in your office and all that, cool stuff.
Right.
But Gen Z in particular, you think about a lot of Gen Zs, and we hire a lot of these Generation Z people in digital marketing and product and usability and data science. They're coming to work with a slightly different purpose. They're not quite as spoon fed as millennials, and they're not quite as streetwise maybe as sort of a Gen X, but they want to side hustle, and they want to leave a little bit of a legacy and have more of a purpose, and it's great for recruiting people.
Graham, this has been great. We really, really, really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much. I've learned a ton. I know our audience has learned a ton, and would love to have you on in the future to see what's changed and see where you are in the marathon at that time.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll meet you at the next water stop. We definitely want to meet you there and have a conversation.
Awesome. Loved it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Cheers.
This podcast is a Hospitality.fm production.